there hasn't been representation for us, which means that the cultural nuances that we face and struggle with in our communities have never been considered at the table.
My name is Nik Nagarkar and you are locked into Culture TV. For the culture, by the culture. Let's go.
Did you see the candidates this year?
For London?
Yeah, there were 2 YouTubers on there. Did you guys see? I was like, are you serious? It was a joke. They didn't make it very far, but the fact
Sadiq
that
only just won, didn't he?
Yeah, barely. It was a close run between him and Sean Bailey, but
What do you make of Sadiq Khan?
I prefer him over the competition. if that's what I've got to choose against, you know.
We're not given much choice here, are we? I mean, we're in Manchester. We've got Andy Burnham. Everyone who watches this show knows I'm a fan of Andy Burnham, obviously. So would I pick Andy Burnham if there was another option? Probably would. I like Andy Burnham. I do like him. I think he's because I've met him a number of times, spent time with him. He's actually the guy that you see on TV. He's exactly the same. So from that basis, I do like him. But as a general rule of thumb for politics, what do I think? I don't know. Like, we're not given much of a good option, are we?
We're not. I think it's difficult because when you don't have representation, that makes it even harder. Because I think for London, Sadiq Khan, it was refreshing to have him there because at least he represents the South Asian community.
Yeah.
And that's as close as we've gotten to having our voices heard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just other people trying to speak on our
How well
behalf.
do you think he represents the South Asian community?
Better than someone who's not South Asian.
Oh, yeah.
But that's been the problem over the years.
Yeah.
There hasn't been representation for us, which means that the cultural nuances that we face and struggle with in our communities have never been considered at the table.
Yeah.
So if we want to have our problems remedied, it means that we have to have our voices at those
Don't you
tables.
think that's crazy? Because if you think, like, when my dad came to this country from India in 1963 or 4, he was a kid when he came. And if you think, so as a population, South Asians have been here in mass numbers for 50, 60 years now. And the fact that we don't really have proper representation at a decent level is quite, it's crazy.
It's concerning.
It is concerning, yeah.
Like, I'm British born, you're British born, and we still don't have our voices heard.
What's
at the
your
main
background?
tables. I'm Punjabi.
Right.
So I was born into a Punjabi family. My parents are from India. Moved to England in the 70s.
Yeah.
My dad
Second wave.
My dad was like, he was about 14 when he came here alone, and he was the first out of his family. He moved in with his uncle, who was kind of his mentor, set up his whole family here, worked his backside off like crazy, and he had like 5 or 6 siblings. Called over all of his siblings and his parents, and he was the sole breadwinner, put them through school, through university, got them all married, and that's who he was. He was a grafter. He just worked so hard from his teen years.
My dad's story is very similar. Very similar.
Most immigrants are. They came here and they just worked. Their work ethic was impeccable. People don't work like that anymore.
What South Asians have achieved in the United Kingdom, it's incredible. As a community, as a society of people, and we were just saying off camera before, it must be, if you include the halves like me, we must be about 8% of the population.
Most probably, yeah.
Which is between 5 and 8%. You could bet a good 6 million people. 5 million people, say I might be fluffing up these figures a bit, I don't know.
I'm just going to nod.
I mean, I don't know. Don't quote me on these figures. But a good few million people at least come from a South Asian background in the UK. And it's crazy that for that amount of people who live here, for that amount of time, do not have real, solid, firm, established representation at the highest levels.
I agree. I agree. That's part of the pain, because you don't. So I'm British Punjabi or British Sikh, whatever you want to call me.
Yeah.
Because I really own my Punjabi heritage. I'm committed to my faith, which is the Sikh faith, and I'm born in England, and my citizenship is British. I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I belong in India.
Yeah.
So it's like, who am I? And that was a big struggle as a teenager, because here I'm being called a Paki and a this and a that, and go back to your own country. I'm like, hang on, this is my country. This is where I was born. Where do I go? Where do you want me to go? And you go to India and you're trying to interact with your relatives there, and they see you as foreign, like, oh, you don't know our struggles here. You don't even know your language. You don't know your culture or your heritage. And they're shooing you out, and here they're shooing you out. And you're like, where do I go?
Yeah.
So if we don't have representation in our own countries of citizenship, where do we belong?
Exactly.
If our voices aren't being heard and our problems aren't being provided solutions.
The fact that we don't have representation has allowed certain people in society, like, who have ended up having their citizenship revoked or whatnot, because there isn't a structure in place to protect South Asian British citizens, in a sense. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, for me that hits onto a really raw nerve of mine. I don't know if you've heard of somebody called Jaggi Johal.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this is a British citizen.
Yeah.
I think he was from Scotland, or is from Scotland, should I say, and born and raised in the UK.
Yeah.
Went to India, I think it's been about 3 or 4 years ago, to get married.
Yeah.
Went there to get married and got arrested by the police.
Yeah.
And has been held in Indian police custody since then.
Why?
Under accusations of terrorism. There is no proof, there is no evidence of anything.
Wow.
And the British government haven't done anything to extradite him back. He's a British citizen. And
born and raised here?
Yep.
And the British government have not brought him home?
Citizenship. Nope, they haven't brought him home. And it has been appealed in Parliament. It's been appealed to government. Most of the youth in England, the Punjabi and Sikh youth, are still protesting about this and still trying to they're fighting for his rights. If that's how expendable we are, just because our skin is brown, or we've got roots in another country as well, what does that say about where we fit into this government or into this system?
I think that if you are not of extended British heritage or white British heritage, there is an element of second-class citizenship here.
When it's this expendable, how frightful is that?
Have you seen The Road to Guantanamo?
Have I seen the
film, The Road to Guantanamo?
I haven't.
About the four lads from Birmingham, around somewhere near Birmingham, from the Midlands anyway. They went to Pakistan for a wedding just after 9/11. Stupid time to go. Very stupid time to go. And then he went to Afghanistan on some sightseeing tour. Again, stupid thing to do. But innocent enough, like they're just four teenagers like driving around, and they end up getting picked up by the Northern Alliance and shipped over to Cuba, to Guantanamo Bay, where I think they spent, how long was it, Cass? 5 years? Longer than that.
That's horrendous. For me, that's frightful. Just last year, there were 5 young Sikh men from the Midlands whose houses were randomly raided.
Oh, randomly?
Yeah. And there were these charges or allegations put against them where the Indian government is trying to get these 5 British citizens taken to India so that they can,
extradited to face charges there?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And people were trying to fight against that.
And what's the British government saying?
There was a point, and I believe that it's being taken to court at the moment. I don't have the full details off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But there was a point where it was being taken to court because the government were about to hand these British citizens over.
Right.
And this, for me, like, we're in the 21st century.
Exactly.
If this can happen now, what does that say about our future? So if, you know, when we're having families in this country, our kids, are they going to be safe here, or are they going to be at risk of the same thing? If someone throws, you know, a random allegation, a terrorism allegation, all of a sudden all the red flags go off,
well,
and then you're going to get shipped off to those countries. But why is it that only happens to us? If those allegations were against somebody of white heritage, would it be the same? Or is their life more valuable than somebody who is of colour? If the Indian government asked to extradite 5 white British citizens,
would be laughed at.
Would the government have agreed?
No.
Would there be people fighting for them to say, please don't send them over there because that's inhumane?
It wouldn't even get to that point of people having to fight that. They would just say, are you crazy? No.
But at the moment you've got some colour in your skin, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like, which is, it's painful. Because you just you constantly feel othered and you don't belong. It's
backward. It's 2021. And at what point? I mean, the fact is, there is no race. This is the scientific fact behind all of this, is there is only one race, which is a human race. The only difference between human beings is melanin in the skin. That is it.
Yep.
And that is based off where ancestrally you grew up. If you lived further north, you needed more vitamin D, therefore your skin was paler to absorb more sunlight. If you lived in hotter climates, your skin was darker because you didn't need it and you needed protection. That is it. That is it. And it's 2021 and we're still having this debate where you can pocket people based off how your skin reacts to the sun, for God's sake. It is absolutely pathetic.
It is.
And I think it is, going back to what we were saying politically, I think it's kind of crazy that we've got someone in power, as in the Prime Minister, who has openly said a lot of these crazy, outrageous, very 1800-esque statements in public, and now he's the Prime Minister of the country. And I just feel like, I mean, the Western world, if we just look at the UK and America, has become so wildly polarized.
Yeah.
And this is not helping the cause like this.
But that's just because the leadership in most of the major countries has projected that narrative. Trump, you know, oh gosh, I don't even know what to say about him. What he opened up in America for people of color was hell-like.
Yeah.
Hate crimes against all colored people, people who were not white, went up like crazy. The hate crimes against Sikhs were out of the roof. Anybody who was not white, basically.
Yeah. Well, because he's on frigging Twitter saying it.
Yeah, but this encouraged people who had been hiding in the shadows, and maybe, you know, everybody has elements of racism in them. I'm not saying that colored people are not racist. We are racist.
Yeah.
But how it's projected and how we treat other people is very different to how a white person who is racist treats somebody of color. And when you take somebody's life just because of the color of their skin, that's very immoral, that's wrong, that's horrendous, that's not humane.
No.
And when your government or your leadership is encouraging that behavior by not condemning it, that's what makes it scary.
I mean, if we reference George Floyd for this, for argument's sake, now any rational human being can see that was first degree murder. And it was just murder. It was blatant, cold-blooded murder. He leant on the guy's neck until he died. And whether he knew or didn't know that he was killing him, I don't care. You're leaning on a guy's neck who's screaming for his mum.
Right.
At what point, you know, when someone screams for their mum, they're dying.
Yeah.
It's a known fact when someone starts screaming for their mum. I said this on another show. It's part of your brain, like going into ultimate survival mode. And the fact that this caused such outrage across the planet that the President of the United States can't stand up and condemn a murder. The fact that he was murdering a black person was the only reason, in my opinion, that he did not want to stand up and condemn that murder, because for fear of pushing away his pro-white audience, as in the Proud Boys and these people in the Deep South and the Bible Belt who've kept him in power and given him favour, which gave him, he got a lot of votes in that last election.
He did.
He got a wild amount of votes.
That's what makes it scary, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That these people are now coming out of the shadows, and they, I think there was last year there was a public celebration of the KKK, where you haven't heard of them for so many decades, but now
public celebration.
They came out to celebrate. They're saying if black people can protest publicly for Black Lives Matter, then we can celebrate our beliefs as well. And
they just don't get
frightful.
it, do they?
It's frightful. It
do
really
they not
is.
realise that it was 150 years ago that they had black people as slaves, and that this stems from a deep, deep crime against humanity that has lasted. The impact of that you don't just wash that away. 50 years ago, black people still didn't have the vote in America.
I think the level of compassion differs from these experiences. When you've only been born and raised in a particular culture, whatever culture that is, you are going to favor those values. They have been passed down to you, and they make up your DNA essentially. Changing that is like changing who you are. That can only evolve if you're willing to see somebody else as human. But if you've been told that these people are not human, this was the premise of colonization. The white people went to save anybody who's not white. They were civilized, and they went to these savages, the people of India, the people of Africa. They went to these savage-like people because we lived off the land. We respected earth, we respected nature and the process of it. And they brought us civilization. They came to save us. This was the perception. This is what the history books say about the colonizers. And if you look at how black people were treated during the slave era in the US, it was the same. They were seen as being animal-like, that they don't have dignity, they don't have the same value of life as a white person. And the fact that that mindset still exists in what we're talking about in terms of representation and how our coloured lives or our coloured bodies are expendable compared to a white body, that is what is problematic. That is what is frightful, because no one's changing that narrative. You've got your nonsense of people now trying to do this diversity and inclusion. What is diversity? How are we supposed to address that? We shouldn't need to have these committees now forming in every large corporate organization because they forgot about us beforehand. They didn't let brown people climb the ladder. You don't see them you don't see colored people or even enough female people sitting at the CEO or the executive boards of any of these organizations. So we've been forgotten at those points. And now, because the incident of George Floyd woke up the world, literally woke up the world, now everybody's kind of shaking in their boots. Oh shit, we've got to get to the table as well. Make sure we don't get sued for that. It is, which is why I'm saying that it's stupid. Diversity shouldn't be a thing that we should be trained for when you've had multicultural communities coexisting for so long.
Is the problem that, I mean, I'm from Manchester. You're originally from Birmingham.
Birmingham.
But, I mean, we're from big cities, big multicultural cities. And I say this a lot, that I feel like being born and raised in South Manchester, I've grown up around everyone. There's been white people, black people, Asian people, Irish, black, there's been everything and everyone, and everyone's always, there's been a natural blend of everyone. In my friend group, is a big mix of South Asians, black people, black origin people, and white British people.
Have you ever experienced racism?
Yeah, heavily as a child.
Like, can you talk about it?
When primary school, I went to a primary school in Stockport it was, and that was a bit. Then it wasn't as multicultural as it is now. And I was the only non-white kid in my class. And so I experienced quite a lot of it. That was when I was like 5 years old. Then I left that school and I went to another one, a bit closer to home, and that was fine. And I had a great time at that school, loved it. But the first one, that was pretty bad.
So when you judge somebody from how, like, you know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we all do, right? I don't want to be offensive, but if you hadn't have told me that you're multi-raced, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
I would have just thought you're white.
Oh, really?
That's the truth, yeah.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I'm saying if I was to judge a book, for me, like the experience of growing up with brown skin and looking different and like we were the cliche Indian family.
Yeah.
We had a little corner shop.
Yeah.
Went to school smelling like curry. Yeah. That was the only perfume I could afford. And my brothers, you know, they were brown skinned, long hair. They wore top knots because they were, you know, at that time they were young. It was brutal. Yeah. It was brutal. And it was either survive or die. There wasn't an in between. It was like either you got to know how to fight back and stand up to this, or you become their bitches, basically.
Yeah.
And you let them own you. There was no in between. There was no compassion from those people who were being so violent and aggressive. Young people, they didn't care. They were trolling, they were bullying, they were like vandalizing. So we'd have our shop windows broken, stuff thrown at the shop. My mom would have to deal with all sorts. She had broken English, but she held her own, you know? And this was every single day. It was at school and it was at home and it was on the way from school or going to the shops or whatever. It was everywhere because we obviously looked different. It's not like there weren't other Indian families in the area, but they became submissive. They became just like, you know, if somebody says something to them, they're going to hide in the shadows. And we had a business to run as well. So if we became submissive, we would have lost business. Yeah. I was a child at this time. So now I'm interpreting my parents' behavior and what they did. But if my dad hadn't have shown us how to fight back or hold our ground, I would have equally just stepped into the shadows, just like my friends did, and said, okay, when someone calls you a paki or, you know, a towel head or whatever, you just ignore it and you let it become normal. But my dad was like, no, you don't. That's not okay. You say something back, or you ask them to stop, or you make them stop. Yeah. And that's a different experience. Most of the people in my school were white. I was one of the few brown people there in primary school and even in secondary school as well. So I think that how we grow up as children and those experiences, they really change how we see the world when we grow up. And for me, it's no different.
Do you think that experience is what's led you down the path that you're on now?
100%, because if I hadn't experienced racism, I wouldn't have questioned my heritage. Am I British or am I Punjabi? Like, which one of these am I? Yeah. And it wouldn't have encouraged me to actually research and learn more about my heritage and my roots and, you know, the land of India. And I absolutely adore the heritage of India. Yeah. Yes. I go before COVID. I'd go several times a year. In fact, that was one of my last trips before COVID hit. But at least twice in a year, I'll go back there.
To the Punjab, or do you go to different places as well?
I definitely go to Punjab at least once a year. I have to. That's where my heart beats. But I love visiting the south as well, to like Kerala. And that part of India is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
I've been to Bombay quite a lot of times.
Actually, I haven't been much to Bombay. It doesn't really appeal to me, but
it's amazing, you know.
Is it really?
Yeah. And when I first went as a kid, I hated it. Like when I went when I was 8, and I was like, it was just a huge culture shock for me. especially coming from
I can imagine.
living with my mum eating pizza and chips, and then like going there and it's real curry. It's not like like what you get here. It's like
spice level out the roof.
Yeah, so all my dad's sisters and that were cooking for me, and it was like that was a new experience. But then the first time I went, I didn't enjoy it mainly because of food and just because I was.
How scared were you sitting in a car?
I was alright with it, you know.
Really?
I was alright with it.
How they drive? You were alright with it?
Only when I was older did I get scared. As a kid, I was fine. You know what? I tell you what. I went when I was about 14. Just me and my dad went, and I went to Pune, and then we got a coach from Pune to Bombay. I was terrified. They drove over the mountains.
Just right on the edge.
Right on the edge. And it's like you're looking out of the window and all you can see is the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah.
And it's like they're ragging this coach around these cliffs.
50 miles an hour.
Yeah. These roads are not designed.
They are not. There's no barriers, there's no safety measures.
Yeah, I remember praying to God on that coach.
See, that's why people in India are spiritual.
Yeah. No, I love it there. I can't wait to get back. I've got a little girl now, so I want to take her.
Oh, bless.
Have
you been to Punjab?
I've never been to. The furthest north I've been is Mahabaleshwar.
Okay, you need to go to Punjab.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I do. I really do. I need to see more of it. I only ever go to Bombay and like Pune when my granddad was alive, but yeah, no, I do. I really do. I want to go and see the south as well, like Kerala, and I've not been there yet.
Okay, I'll be your tour guide.
Yeah. All right, it's a deal. No, I'd love
We'll hook it up.
I'd love to go there.
It's such a magical place. It's as every country has the positive and negatives. Like, the government, I think, is where the negatives come in everywhere. That's where the system fails. But when you look at the land and the people and the culture, there's so much richness.
Yeah.
Even where there isn't like material wealth, you see the richness in their joy and in how they live. And they're getting on with life. They're really, just making the most of it. They love having a good time. They love singing. They love their food. Life doesn't get any better than that, right?
It's crazy. I went to see where my dad was born, in this like little village called Maligaon. It's like sort of not. It's like it's in Maharashtra, but like the north part sort of thing.
Okay.
And so we went to this village, and it's like a proper bit, like it's proper like it's like a film, like it was a proper.
What does it look like?
It was like going 500 years back in time. The electricity was here and there. They had water from the well. The roof was a thatched roof. The walls were made of mud. It was mad. And to see where my dad was born in the corner of this room. And he said, he goes, this is where I was born here. I was like, where? He goes, here. I went, what, there? He's like, yeah, like literally there. And it was like, wow. And just to see how far he's come from that. But they, like, seeing his family on his mum's side, they still live there. It's still their house.
Wow.
They're still in that village.
How did it feel being there? Especially like you having been brought up in the West, and now you go there and you see where your dad came from.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you said that you thought I look like a white guy. When I'm over there, there's no. I am a white guy over there. I mean, here some people think different things, but over there, there's like, nah, you're a white guy. Especially over here, you're a white guy. So I do stick out like a sore thumb out there. So it's difficult because everyone stares at me. They stare. I mean, they probably stare at you because you would look very westernized.
Yeah, they can tell. They have a radar, even when you dress like them.
Yeah.
So when I go, I'll be wearing Indian clothes and I'll try to blend in.
They'll see your shoes or something.
God,
they'll see something.
They have an eye.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're from outside? And I'm like, nope, I'm from the village around the corner. But they'll catch me. And I'm like, oh, they've got this radar. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You know what's mad? When I first went to Bombay as an adult, when I was like, I'd been as a kid a couple of times, but then when I went when I was like 19 or 20 or something, and seeing like, all the little kids coming and asking you for money. And this time I'm an adult, so I'm not like a kid with my dad saying, no, don't give them anything. It's my choice to give or not to give to them. And that was quite conflicting, because I know they're not supposed to give them anything, but my heart just wants to give them something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I know it's just going to some gangster somewhere. but you're seeing them there begging, please buy, help me. Like, I mean, it's like,
yeah.
What do you do?
It's a hard one, man. It's a hard one. Like, it still messes with me when I mean, even now, like, begging's become a thing in England.
I know.
And, it's so hard.
I find it a lot easier to say no in England.
Really?
Yeah, I find it because I just think, because of the benefit system that we have here, I mean, I don't know. I might sound a bit harsh saying that because I don't know if everyone's getting benefits, but I just think because it's a rich country, I find it easier to say, and because I know so much of it is a scam.
So if you were to see a homeless person, would you offer them anything?
Yeah, I say I'll buy you food. I always do that. Like, I always do that. I'll always offer to buy them food or drinks or...
But when you're at the traffic lights and they try to clean your windows?
They don't try and clean my windows. They just come to the door and try and put their hand in the window.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Manchester.
Okay, London's a bit more civilised.
No, they just try and put their hand in the window. Yeah, no, I don't. And half of them, like... It's very difficult to see who's in a genuine situation and who's just smoked enough crack to put themselves in that situation. And drug problems are not one thing that, you know, there is a reason that, and there is rehabilitation resources that the country needs to provide for those people. That's one issue. But then there's people who just literally had an unlucky go of it and they've ended up on the street. But it's how do you differentiate between different people? And I think
it's really hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard. I mean, in India, it really, really messed with me at the beginning. I was like you, that you want to give them anything you've got or everything you've got, because you don't want anyone to be suffering, right? And I've had many bad experiences where my heart kind of took the better of me, and I gave to one. Within seconds, there was a stampede surrounding me. And I was like, holy shit, how do I get out of here? And then it's like you have to switch. And they hit on all of the wrong buttons. Like, now I have to try not to get irritated because they're so persistent. I went to Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple, last year when I was there. And I was walking towards the Gurdwara. And I was like in my mode, like just zoning into my spiritual self. And I was like, you know, bring out your best self, be all holy, you know, like you do, right? And I'm walking up, and then out of nowhere, someone starts tapping me. And I thought maybe it's someone I know, because, you know, you don't just go and touch someone you don't know. And it's a lady who's begging. And she was older than me. Wearing the sari and everything, and you know, like they do the whole please and they'll call you sister, like Didi, Dede Kush, like give me something. And I was like, dude, do you have to do it here? And then they bring in all of we're gonna curse you if you don't give us anything, and if you do give us something, we'll give you blessings. I was like, sod off.
Don't like, start coming with the curses.
Do you know? I was like, sod off. And it really messed with my mojo, because I was so into like going and meditating, because I hadn't been for so long, and this was what I encountered on the pathway there. I was like, man, you just messed with my vibe.
You know what? Have you seen? I don't know if these people are in the Punjab as well, but in Bombay, there's a group of people who at birth they have the genitals cut off, right? And they're they class themselves as neither male or female. So anyway, I'm on the train one time in Bombay with my cousin, and so this like female looking person comes to me, and they starts asking me for money. And so I'm this is the last time I went a few years ago, I'm pretty seasoned at saying no by now. So I'm like, no, and then my cousin's like, no, you got to give her money. And I'm like, why? And he goes, because she'll curse you. And he was basically telling me that there's this group of people who, do you know about this? You've got to give them money. So they turn up at weddings and they say, if they curse the wedding, give us 10 grand, or we're cursing the wedding. And they'll go and give them 10 grand.
I know. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
They're called kusre.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So for us, we can laugh about this, right? But you know, when you're so absorbed into a culture and into a system, the fear it's real for those people. I don't believe in that. I think that we've got our own strength to be able to cleanse energy. So if somebody does, you know, try to put a curse or some other shit on you, you've got the capacity within you to connect with your inner strength to cleanse that.
Put a curse on me.
But
I'll put my curse on me. If anyone's putting a curse on me, it'll be me.
But these guys, like, they'll go and extort people. That's if they know that there's a wedding happening, they're going to turn up with their crew. And that's what they'll do. Pay us X amount.
My cousin was scared.
Otherwise, we're going to give you a curse, and their marriage is going to fall apart. And they'll never have kids. That's what they'll say. Like,
because honestly,
it's a great business model.
It's a great business model. It's a win-win, that, isn't it? Give us money. If you don't, you fucked, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.